What would you do if you had a job and the leadership was really ineffective, unprofessional, incompetent? Would you stay or would you go? Especially if it negatively impacted your livelihood. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what happens when military leaders, officers in government behaves badly. By badly, I mean when they show their incompetence, when they're indecisive, when they're ineffective. What happens? Unfortunately, for the men and women who serve, there's not much they can do. They're trapped. Think about that. They're trapped. Hi, my name is Gary, and this is Military Illumination. It's a podcast where I handle the tough subjects. I ask questions, share information, and provide insight to things the military and the government don't want you to know, especially if you're considering enlisting in the military. Something very tragically has happened. Most Americans don't know. Many Americans don't care. But it came across my path today through a YouTuber that I watch all the time, Denny. I'll put it inside my transcript. Denny, he's a YouTuber. It's Denys Davydov, Davydon. He's a YouTuber who's been covering the Ukraine-Russia conflict since it began. It starts out with this. The situation with the U.S. Navy is crazy. Sailors are desperate. Okay? Think about that. A U.S. ship, and this is what's happening. People have been trapped for over 250 days with poor supplies. He talks about how they're trying to jump off the ship, committing suicide. Right? It's not good for them. What's happening isn't good at all. It's not. According to the Telegraph report, it says U.S. sailors aboard the U.S. Abraham. It says the U.S. sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln have attempted to jump overboard amid a growing mental health crisis during their 9 months at sea. The aircraft carrier deployed to the Middle East as part of the Iran war has received a record-breaking deployment of 250 days at sea. They're literally trapped on this boat, right? I can only imagine what's happening on there. I can only imagine the tragedy that's being played out in that ship that our government has put in there without any caring about their well-being. Right? Something to think about when you join the military is this. The question you ask yourself is this. Am I putting my hand in incompetent people who's going to look after my best welfare as long as I am giving my heart for the service of our country? As long as I'm doing my job the best I can do, and I'm working hard, can I rely on my leadership, my commander-in-chief, my Secretary of Defense, the officers that are over me? All you have to do is look at what's happening on that carrier to get your answer. Okay? That's all you have to do. Now, I'm trying to page different things I want to talk about here. I apologize, but I'm going to be all over the place today because something that it would be a news flash for most places in the moment. But what it really does, it speaks to what I've been saying all along. It speaks to that. Why does it speak to that? It demonstrates in real time what our government really thinks of our men and women who serve in the armed forces. I see a lot correlation between what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in our United States government and our military. Russia is just churning the bodies like crazy, and no one's doing anything. And their government still pushes people out there. They don't care. I see the same thing playing out in our government with our current administration. They're just, why? They have a bigger agenda. They have a bigger agenda or another agenda that has nothing to do with the lives and well-being of the men and women who serve in their military. It's just a means to an end. And as long as they got a country full of warm bodies that they can push to the end, to the means, they don't care. The Commander-in-Chief of the United States military don't care. Okay? They're probably, like I said before, very ineffective, very inept, right? And indecisive. I'm going to get into that later. I'm going to make the connection. Here, according to another news report, Democrats demand answers on Trump. I'm going to read this from here. It's basically The Guardian, right? It's The Guardian, and I'll put a link into my transcripts. It says Democrats demand answers on Trump on USS Abraham Lincoln conditions. Democrats on Sunday intensified their demand for answers from Trump administration over the conditions aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln at the aircraft carrier's nearly 9-month deployment, continued fueling concern over crew morale, mental health, and living conditions. Ruben Gallego, a Democratic senator from Arizona, said on Sunday that problems aboard the Lincoln had kept mounting, and he blamed the carrier's prolonged deployment on the unresolved war that Donald Trump started in February with Iran as lackluster leadership in general from the Republican president administration. He goes on to say, I was just speaking to a Lincoln crew member's spouse just about 3 days ago, and this is the current problem right now. Gallego said on ABC News this week, the deep problem here is that this administration did not plan for this war, did not plan how to get out of this war, and did not really understand how this war was going to escalate. How do you go to war and not know the outcome, the consequences if you go there? You're ineffective. You're incompetent. That's how you do that. But it's not the first time the state's government involved themselves in a situation. Think about Korean War, the Vietnam War, Iraqi War, Afghanistan. That was a disaster. 20 odd years, and we walk out of there leaving everybody hanging. Okay. Now we're talking about Iran. Don't you think that the military of those countries are watching us, what we do and how we do it, that they don't plan for our actions? I think Sun Tzu says, don't go engage a lot of times. I'm paraphrasing. Don't engage with the enemy often, because they're going to learn your ways, and destroy you. Think about that. So I continue on. Gallego, a retired U.S. Marine, also warned that comments from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Trump dismissing Lincoln concerns could discourage service members from staying in the military. Okay, so now he's not really concerned about the well-being of the sailors that are on that ship. He's worried about what's going to happen, how we're going to keep people in. It's going to have a snowball effect. Right, he is a U.S. Marine. Yeah, he's retired, right? Probably an officer. I don't know. I'll look it up. But speaking out, those remarks from Gallego came amid growing scrutiny over Lincoln's extended mission in the Middle East. The Navy aircraft carrier has been at sea for nearly 9 months and has gone more than 200 days without a port call. Think about that. These men and women are locked in that ship, can't go anywhere. Don't tell me the sexual assaults are rampant. Don't tell me the suicides are happening. It is happening. They're jumping out the ship. Now, before this happened, I was hearing little bits and pieces about this ship and what was happening and the suicide. But I don't know. It just didn't dawn on me. It was almost like fake news, right? Until this pops up. Until Denny, who's covered these Ukrainian war since it started, brought it in there. And that's his headlines. The headlines he says, the situation with the U.S. Navy is crazy. Sailors are in desperate. So you think about joining the military. You got to think about who you're having to lead you. The days of a defined war, polarized war, where there's sides are picking and they're declaring war. Trump never declared it, just like Putin never declared it. He's following them the same path that Putin is. And like the Russians, who had like ostriches, just like the Russian citizens who were like ostriches with their head in the sand, so are the Americans. And we're happy. We're warm. We're in this country. Every day is kumbaya. We can worry about woke stuff. We can worry about stuff that doesn't matter. But now, Russians, they're getting a taste of it. They're getting bombed day and night. There's shortages of gas. There's shortages of rations. The supplies are being wrecked. Russians can't get supply. Their armies are not being able to get supply. Okay? While, same thing here, right? They're not supplying our ship. The Russians aren't getting supplies. It's something that happens when you're arrogant. Wild berries, that's a Costco. That can happen right here in the United States. But we're happy. We're Americans, right? But we got men and women who are trapped and no one cares. The news media isn't carrying anything. The families are desperately calling their senators. What did I tell you about the senators? You can look at my other podcast. What am I talking about the senators? They can give a rat. You know what? They can care less about him. Here he is, instead of saying how he's helping this family. This is probably a young mom or a family who is struggling, the family's also going through mental health issues, right? Because their loved ones are reaching out. They're trapped. I think it was different. My dad was in the Vietnam War, and they've got extended. It was bad when they got extended to 7 months. You don't know what it's like when your father is in the Navy. And they're supposed to come back. And they get extended from a 7-month cruise to a 9-month cruise. Now, these folks are on a 9-month cruise who haven't been in the port, who's not getting supply. But what's different now is that we got phones, we got internet, there's a connection. But this senator isn't doing anything. That's what I keep saying when you listen to my other podcast about senators. Don't go to the senators. Why? They could have stopped this a long time ago. They could have put an end to this a long time ago. The Republicans and the Democrats could have put into this a long time ago. But it's all about their political careers. And being in the military, you're just a pawn. Okay, and that's what I'm getting at. You're just a pawn. You're nothing more than ends to a means to an end. That's all you are. Now, another part of leadership is taking advice. Another part of leadership is looking at what's happening around you to prepare your soldiers, to prepare your country, to keep them out of harm's way. What our leadership, our Trump, I'm going to say right now, Pete, they can care less. Vance, when you got Zelensky, a leader under fire, coming with his hand out to your White House, asking for help because your country is being destroyed because of Russia is invading for no reason, and you essentially like a king. Essentially, you berate the man for how he is dressed. He's not in a suit and tie. He's in battle uniform. He's a leader under fire. And he's trying to save his country. But yet he comes to our White House, and Vance tells him, basically, get on your knees, man. Thank me. Kiss my ring. He wouldn't have the ring. Trump would have the ring. He's more like a court jester. But this man comes, bended knees, asking for help. And our leaders basically treat him like a peasant in a monarch situation where he said, kiss my ring and get on your knees and beg. The tides have turned. Zelensky has come back. He has come back, but now he needs more. But this time, he's under strict. He's saying, I have learned how to defeat this type. I have seen the new way the wars are being fought. It's no longer armor against armor, missiles against missiles. It's a fight you don't fight, but you fight it with drones, right? It's not head-to-head like you used to. There's a new way of war coming at us. There's a new way. But once again, what did he say? What did our commander-in-chief say of the United States Armies? The commander-in-chief of the United States military say, we don't need your help. We got it covered. We don't need you. And we're just getting thumped. We're getting raked over the coals over there. A small country is kicking us. But it's not the first time a small country has kicked our ass. Vietnam, the countless amount of bodies, the countless people who died because of it. And we end up running anyways, leaving behind orphan kids, people who helped us, keeping them, the people who helped the United States in the Vietnam War, they paid the price with their life, right? Who did we care? My dad died. He died a year after, basically 2 years after he retired. Agent Orange got him. Pretty sure they knew what was happening with him before they retired him. I guarantee it. They haven't heard. A good leader would know about, I'm sorry for going to rant, but a good leader would take care of his people. He would keep them strong, right? They would learn from history. David and Goliath, right? Samson, right? What else? Vietnam, a bunch of guerrillas. I'm not even going there. I'm not even going to talk about doggone the Korean War. But yeah, we'll go in there and we will bomb the mountain. We bomb these buildings. See, we got you. We're going to keep bombing you. What happened? Doggone it. It's in a mountain. Unless you can get into that mountain, blow it up from the inside. Hey, all they're going to do is rebuild. But they did. Iran rebuilt. They rebuilt the entrance. Nothing's changed. But yet, we depleted our rations, our supply of missiles. So now we can't even have to help anyone else out. And the country is in a very vulnerable situation right now. And because we are a commercial type of country, the defense contractors aren't going to cut us no deal on those missiles. Gouge. And who's going to pay? The taxpayers. When Ukraine is doing the same thing for less. Think about that. I heard news that they're able to create the ballistic missiles half the cost. Okay, so that's I got it off my chest. But you got to understand, if you're thinking about the military, you got to understand this is what you're getting into. You have no control over anything anymore, which is going in. So how can Trump get away with it? How can Pete get away with it? Because there's no accountability in the military. There's the Ferris doctrine. There's no shield. There's no support. They do what they want to do. They lie to get people in, tell them half truths to get people in the military, and then screw them over. And there's nothing they can do about it. And there's nothing they can do about it. I've been in the military, right? I've had some ineffective leaders. I had even in some NCOs. Like I said before, incompetent. I had a platoon sergeant just, he tried to give me a bad EER. I'm telling you, when I was leaving Fort Lewis, like a month there, right? And I just tore it apart, basically. It was just, and then a lieutenant tried to give me one. I guess they had to give him one as well. It was all wrong. It was a lie. In the words of my battalion sergeant major, it says, I know it is wrong. There's nothing we can do about it. I can't make them change. And there you have it. When you enlist in the military, you are putting yourself in a situation. You're putting yourself in a situation of certitude. The best way to really think about it is slavery. And before we get into this white and black thing, they had indentured servants. They had slaves that were black. Okay, Africa. They had slaves through mankind history. Okay, so even though we had slavery in our country for over almost 200 years, right? Right. It's been going on since the beginning of man. The Egyptians, Israel was slaves to Egypt for over 400 years. Okay. Then Moses came up to God. God stepped in and delivered them. And perhaps this whole thing with the military right now with our country is just God stepping in, punishing. I'm not gonna go down here, but there's a lot of similarities. Arrogance, pride. What do you say? Pride counted for the fall. So our mainstream news don't carry that. Think about that. They don't carry it. They don't talk about what's happening to Abraham Lincoln. They don't talk about our sailors and what they're having to go through. I'm going to almost guarantee you that ship hits the port, you're going to have a lot of AWOL soldiers. If not just a lot of AWOL soldiers, you're going to have a lot of soldiers getting out. And guess what's going to happen right behind it? What's going to happen right before it or in between? I can guarantee, you can mark my words, they're going to be able to stop loss. Remember that. It's August 16th, 2026, 8:12 p.m. At some point, at the end of the year, they're going to have a stop loss in the military and people can't get out. And if it's not the end of the year, it's going to be soon after that. Right? And it's going to be devastating. A lot of the men and women, there's PTSD just brewing. Suicides is brewing. There's helplessness. No one's helping them. They're stuck in this military system on this ship with crazy officers. Yeah, I can say crazy officers because they're bloodthirsty and they're power hungry and they're just manipulating those people. It's sad. I wish I can just I wish I could hear their story. I just want to. I don't know where. If you know someone who's Abraham Lincoln, if you're a family, get in touch with me. Right? Leave me an email. I don't know. MilitaryIllumination.com. That's my website. Hit that up. Send me an email. I want to hear your story. I want you to share. So, hostile work environment. This is what I was working on here at Starbucks today. This is where now we're coming full circle. Before, something in the middle of my podcast, I stopped recording for some reason. So it may seem like there's two in one. I'm just going to take off I'm going to start where I left off from. So if it sounds a little bit choppy or disjointed, it's because of that reason. I want to hear from the people on that ship or their families, or if you know anything, because isolated incident, things in the military aren't isolated. They're part of a bigger issue. The things with Abraham Lincoln is part of a bigger issue. And the issue is basically ineffective leadership. from the Department of Defense, from the President of the United States, all the way down to local commanders and our congressional leaders as well. In the military, what you don't understand is the work environment they have to live in. Right? We don't know it, and people don't talk about that on the outside in civilian world, right? But often often you're required to work in situations that are not ideal. Situations that if you were in a civilian life, you wouldn't tolerate, you would walk away from. Military people are trapped. They are trapped because there's nothing they can do. Another thing that people don't think about when they enlist in the military, they're constantly thinking about what they are familiar with and assuming that is how it is in the military. But it isn't the case. You have, in many cases, leadership that's not very effective, that's incompetent, doesn't look at the big picture. And that impacts the person, that impacts the people, that impacts what your life is. It's full circle because of what's happening on the USS Abraham Lincoln happens a lot in the military. Whereas they're put in situations they have no control over, but must endure. That's the thing when you join the military. A lot of times when you join, most people think about it is the boot camp, how hard it's going to be. I got to learn how they're going to be yelling at me, they're cussing at me, the drill sergeant's so tough, and I'm going to do push-ups or anything like that. But the thing about the basic training is that it's simple. It's very simple. It's the easiest part of military life because you have a beginning, you have an end. You don't have a lot of interaction with officers. You don't have a lot of day-to-day stuff that grinds on people. It's very simple, very basic. Hence for basic training. Then the person would go into their advanced school where they learn the skill that they signed up for. Once again, very limited interaction with officers. You're there for learning. You know there's a beginning, you know there's an end. The challenge comes in when you go to your permanent unit or your ship or wherever you're going to be performing your work at, where you're going to serve at your time at. That's where the challenge becomes, because now you are definitely the possession of the U.S. government. The commander-in-chief, right now is Trump, Secretary of Defense, which is like Pete. And these people are not competent leaders. They're going to put you in situations that is detrimental to your health. They're going to put you in situations that are going to cause you to behave or act or engage in activity that you normally wouldn't have under pressure and strain. You're going to put you into mental health challenges that causes you further pain that even may last after the military. These are things that people aren't told, you don't think about, you don't prepare for. When they say you may go to war, most time people think, okay, it's going to be a defined thing. You know what they're going to do. I'm going to have a defined job. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to follow my orders. Very little, but very little chance of anything going wrong, because we're a mighty powerful country with a military. We're finding out the hard way right now in Iran, in the Middle East. What you're seeing in real time is what happens when you have leadership that's ineffective. They haven't thought out anything, haven't thought out the plan fully. Our government, our United States isn't new to this. You look at Vietnam, you look at the Korean War, you look at the Vietnam War, you look at the Iraqi situation, you look at Afghanistan, you look at the tit for tat we have in the Middle East, you look at Iraq. It's the same thing over and over again. Military personnel put in no-win situations and must endure. The outcome for that is nothing more than mental health issues, right? The challenge with that is that having to endure that, a person may do something that's out of character for them, get involved in something or misbehave in a way that puts him in the arena of punishment, which leads to maybe a dishonorable discharge, less honorable discharge, okay, or a general discharge. Any of those discharges on your DD-214, which follows you until you go to the grade and even pass your grade, will have a negative impact on your life after the military. Not only do they screw you up while you're in the military, but now you're screwed up after the military. And this doesn't happen in civilian life. You get in a bad situation, you probably get an attorney, you probably go to a reunion, or you probably just get out. You probably just leave. I don't get out. You probably just leave and find another job. Not so in the military. You're stuck, right? Whether you're on a ship or you're on a base in the Middle East where you can't leave, right? Where the decisions of the commander-in-chief, the Secretary of Defense, have put you in harm's way with no way out. That's what we're dealing with right now. But it has happened. It has happened before. But it doesn't have to be this way. If you look at what's happening in Russia and with Ukraine, there's a correlation with what's happening with the United States in Iran. Putin is buddies with Trump. Our moves are matching what their moves were, and the outcome is similar. You got military personnel who are not being supplied, who's having to just live on what they have, starve basically, not being treated nicely, put in harm's way. You have generals who are being assassinated in Russia, but instead of being assassinated in the United States, you have the Secretary of Defense firing them. He has fired over 24 high-ranking officers and leaders and admirals and generals. 24. He is depleting the foundation of our military organization. He's taking away the knowledge. You're taking away the experience. And down the road, as you're going to go, that's going to impact everything else. That impacts officers below them. And eventually it's going to impact the military person who's enlisted. Is pressure coming? But people don't think about that. Now you have a ship, several carrier groups out there who haven't been to a port in over 200 days, who haven't been resupplied almost 200 days to extension. Why? Because a lot of their supply resources were based on land. Bring it onto the ship. That's been figured out. You don't think Iran knew that? It's the same game plan that Ukraine is doing against Russia. He's disrupting their supply lines. He's weakening them. Now we're bombing these mountains. Okay, you're basically bombing mountains. These big old rock structures. Oh yeah, we have destroyed them. We blew it up. But they just rebuild it. It just rebuilds it. And just with Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine has rebuilt it, and they're getting better and they're getting stronger. But our military is weak right now. It's going to get weaker because people are going to leave. They're going to leave. They're not going to stay. It's going to be hard to get them in. And they may end up doing what Russia's doing, which is making these major promises of money, because that's what people need, and not delivering. Or giving these major promises of money and giving the money, and then putting them soldiers, airmen, and Marines in harm's way where they die. And the American people don't care. No one cares. They're just allowing it to happen. Well, it's like Russia, eventually it's going to come onto our soil. Eventually, it's going to come onto our soil. One way or the other, it's coming. And then we'll understand. Just like the Russians, the Russians are supply issues. They're wild berries. Their supply chains. The gas. Trump didn't want. He's making his money and he's going to move on. In his wake, he's a depleted country. And I read someplace where one of the leaders in Iran said, We're not targeting Trump. We don't want to. He's doing fine. He's destroying a country already by himself. Why are we gonna destroy somebody who's already doing it, destroying his own country? Look it up. But that's what you understand when you're dealing with the military, when you're dealing with enlistments. This is a fact. This is a piece no one talks about. The leadership piece. Who are the people that's going to be in charge of me? Are they competent enough to put me in the best situation possible and protect my interests? The answer is no. And we're seeing it right now in the Middle East. We're seeing men and women on a major carrier who's having issues, who can't even get supplied. Their families are calling and talking to their senators. You don't talk about that. People don't talk about that. But that's what's happening. And it's crazy. It's sad. And all because how can Trump get away with that? How can our country, our leaders get away with that? Because of the Ferris Doctrine. They're not going to be held accountable. Remember that, right? And no other government agency is going to tell them what to do. You got two people in power who have no military experience and they're arrogant as heck. Like I said before, Zelensky came on bended knees with his hand out and his head down, asking for help at the beginning. Biden and that group, they supported him. Before Trump, we supported that country. We helped that country. We were there for them. But with Trump, he's just playing games with them. It's just money. That's all it is. It's a feeling of power. It's addicting. I said it before. Here's a man who's trying to protect his country, provide for his country, hands out, head down. And what does they do? He berates him for not wearing a suit to the White House. How dare you? Then Vance, the heir to the throne, he berates him for not saying thank you. We did this and you can't say thank you? Get on your knees and kiss the ring. That's in mind what it's like. It's like a monarchy where you got the king, and I don't want to say the prince heir. I'll probably say the court jester in Vance. I'm sorry, but I'm probably in trouble. But I don't care. But now the same man he pulled it out. Zelensky, it's a very powerful country. They're kicking Russia's behind. How long will it be? It's a stalemate, basically. But they're going tit for tat, right? And he comes back and saying, I figured it out. Let me show you how to do this new war that's coming your way. Trump, we don't need your help. We don't need you. We got this. What do we have right now? We have a stockpile of missiles that's depleted. We have sailors in the Gulf who can't get fed properly, can't get his proper supplies. We have a mental health crisis happening on the ship. They're saying, I'm hearing they're talking about people jumping off. But you don't know, but people don't know that. So that's what I want you to know. When I'm talking about the military and military illumination, this is exactly the day-to-day life of military lifestyle. When I was in, I've had officers that were incompetent. Had major NCOs incompetent because they didn't know. They weren't good leaders. Once when I was at Fort Lewis for about a couple months before I got out, my last ER, I had an NCO, my platoon sergeant, try to get me to make this garbage. The grammar was wrong. It was just, it blew it away. I said, I'm not signing that. And I start pointing all this stuff out here. You're telling me I don't know my job when my skill golf equation score is 98? Very effective. I made my E6 very quickly. I think it was like in 5.5 years. It was quick. Had I known what I was for White House communications, when they were already doing the background checks on me. That was going to be my next assignment, was the White House. I didn't care. And they tried to stop that. And when I found out, that the officers tried to stop that, so and they said they couldn't. There's nothing they could do because it is a Department of Defense assignment. Right? It wasn't just a regular assignment. And I was, at that point, I was a good soldier. And I maxed out a lot of PT score. Like my skill qualifications had never went below 95. I knew my stuff. Very, very competent person. I'm not being arrogant, but I was. At that point in time, I was doing schoolwork, college at night. I was a staff sergeant at that time. Again, so these are kind of things you're dealing with. You're dealing with these officers who behave badly because they can't. Why would you want to put your livelihood in those hands? Have things gotten so bad that you're willing to submit to slavery type behavior? Most people can say, yeah, if it's a way to feed their family, but it's at a cost. So this comes full circle. This issue with the USS Abraham Lincoln, right? This whole thing, I wasn't even going to talk about this today, right? But it basically accentuates what I was going to talk about, which was the Washington National Guard, and what they did to my friend, right? The malicious prosecution. It's the same thing. I think it's the same because you got someone who thinks they're superior to someone who isn't, where they feel is inferior. You got country like the United States think they're superior to Iran, but in the end, it's not that way. You have Ukraine was Russia seen as was superior to Ukraine, where the Russia seen that as a small country that can be dominated in 3 days, roll over them. It happened. It played on Vietnam. The guerrillas just kicked our butts. We had to run. We left stuff. We ran. And when we ran and we left orphans there, we left families there, we left people who left the United States to fend for themselves, and we ran with the tail between our legs. And that's what's happening now. So the incident with the National Guard, Washington National Guard, and Brett Dougherty is an example of someone who's thinking they're superior in knowledge and can just ramrod somebody, a soldier who's just fighting for their careers. It should have been a slam dunk for them. They, as you're going to find out, they lied, they misrepresented information, they falsified documents, made false official statements, manipulated evidence, they violated the soldier's constitutional rights, the right to the UCMJ, right? They just, in all intents and purposes, this soldier should have been kicked out with nothing. And they were kicked out, but not in a way. It's a sad story. And what is this soldier? It's just one soldier with a friend, me, who stood by them. And we fought together. We challenged the system. I helped because I couldn't believe that this was happening. I was saying, no, it can't. Someone's got to hear it. This is not how it's supposed to be. But it's exactly how it's supposed to be. It's exactly how it is. So these officers who did this, they thought the night the final verdict was in and was over, they were high-fiving each other, they're hugging, they were happy. But what should have taken, what they were anticipating like 4 or 5 months, it should have been a slam dunk, right? Should have been over. It was over 16 months. The only reason it was rushed because Dockery had to get to his leadership school. He was going to his war college. And that's why they just underhandedly just pushed the paperwork. They persecuted a person without an attorney. And it's all in the paperwork. And it's not going to change because Lieutenant Rudolph Ferris and several officers were killed in that barracks fire, and our government didn't make the families whole. the soldiers that were killed because of the negligence of Army surgeons, their families were not making whole. The soldiers and sailors and the airmen and the personnel who were sexually assaulted by officers were not making whole. Okay? So this situation with the Washington National Guard will not be changed. They will not recant. They got away with an illegal actions, and they're okay with that. But what they did not account for, that over this person that you're speaking to you, Gary, never forgot. As I sat in a dark room with coffee, was signing the final documents, right, that sealed the fate of that soldier. It was a deep, dark room panel. I will never forget it. With the flag. Here I'm saying, how the flag is there and you have just violated about 19 acts of injustice, and you're signing it and you feel good about it. He's dead now. I just found out as I was doing some more research. He's dead. He didn't last long after his retirement. And they're not going to change that. The current administration, the current leadership, they're not going to change it. But here's what we do know, is now we know how they do it. That is not haphazardly done. It is not a single isolated incident. It's what the military does. It's how they operate. And you got to understand how they operate, because you got to make a decision when you enlist in the military. Do you want to be part of it? Because it's not going to change. It is what it is. And those sailors that are on that ship are finding it out. Those Marines and those Army guys that are in the Middle East and those bases that are not covered, not protected, because our government didn't have the foresight to see that they can get bombed and the drones attack them, because they had no countermeasures, and they don't care. But they're suffering. Families that have died. But yeah, our Department of Defense tried to cover it up by saying, we're going to recategorize the deaths so it doesn't show that they died during epic fury, right? So the death toll is low. But you still can't believe the numbers the military gives you. They lie. And maybe the ones who are dead, but how many of the ones who are injured and have lost limbs, who life will ever be changed? People don't think about that. And the thing with the National Guard, I'm going to talk about it later in other episodes, but because when I heard about what's happening on the ship, I just had to change. I had to talk about it. It's just like, I have to. People got to know, but Americans don't care. And eventually, it's going to hit us. So the incident with the Washington National Guard that persecuted an innocent soldier by violating their rights under the UCMJ, United States Code of Military Justice, UCMJ, I'm sorry, through the laws and the Constitution, which doesn't matter for the soldiers anyways, right? They falsified documents, they falsified information, they lied. They took an innocent person and prosecuted them, and they laughed about it in the end. But here's what, let's take a roll call. I'll talk a little bit later and a little bit more in depth. There's William Palmer Shaw, executive officer, the major at the time, executive officer of 66 Aviation Brigade. Brett E. Doppler, he was a commander at the time of 168 Aviation Battalion. Okay. Then there was the adjutant general, which was Timothy Lowenberg, major general. Then assistant adjutant general, Brigadier Leroy Legowitz, and I think he's dead. I think he's dead already, right? And I think he died recently. He didn't last very long. And then there's Major General Gregory Burlaw. I think he's dead as well. He didn't last very long. And I think there's Daniel P. Coffey, Brigadier General. He was the one that signed off the paperwork. He's dead. So I think somebody might still be alive, but I'm not worried about it right now. Then there's going to be the prosecutors for JAG, Major Donald Bennett. Then there's going to be Robin Davis, a JAG officer. Then there's going to be First Lieutenant Christopherson. Then there's going to be, he was the other prosecutor. Then Gregory Goodell, captain, who was the attorney that was supposed to represent the soldier who walked away from it. Then there's going to be some non-commissioned officers that I mentioned, and that's right there. That's just a jagged part. Now we'll talk about the civilian side of things. Of course, there's the governor's office, Gary Locke. He was made aware of it in his office. Christian Gregoire, Attorney General. Then it's going to be Jonathan McCoy, was the attorney general that went to the courts to falsify information in Superior Court, Pierce County. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of people. There's going to be Adam Smith, which is a senator. There's going to be Patty Murray, the senator. There's going to be a couple of the representatives, right? Norm Dix, Mr. Dickin Man himself, right? He's supposed to be all for the soldiers, all for the veterans. All these people were stacked against this one soldier. They all fought against this one soldier. What it looked like, this soldier was left for dead. But like Ukraine was left for dead when Russia attacked, and now they're kicking their butts, right? Just like the Vietnamese in that country were left for dead when we invaded. Okay? And it's just like Afghanistan, we walked away and we walked in and destroyed them for 20 years and walked away. I'm still here, sharing what happened, sharing what our government is all about, sharing why it's not a good idea to enlist in the military. It's better to have the draft and to go involuntary than to go involuntary and be lied to. Throughout this whole matter, I talk to people in the Army and Board of Appeals, National Guard Bureau. I actually talk to people on the phone about this. White House in letters. Man, it's just, I went through everything. So there's no stone left unturned, and they all turn their backs. And that's what you get when you enlist in the military. That's what's happening now. People don't care. Even from the soldier's family and friends, some of them turned their backs on the soldier. But I stood with the soldier. I stood with, because I believed. That's why I stood with them. Because I believed. I could not believe. I believed in our system. I believed in our government. I believed in the military. I believed that there was good in it. There was integrity was good. That this was an isolated incident that somebody needed to know about. But what I realize now is that's just how it is. When you look at court cases, the Supreme Court cases, it's littered with cases where the same thing is happening. Ineffective assistance of counsel, JAG officers doing the same thing. I think I ran down enough. But what happens when you go in? Well, you put yourself in harm's way. You put yourself at the mercy of leaders who don't care, who are money grabbers. Our government, those guys, they're making their money. They're making money hands over face. And all the list of people are, it's just, I would say, cannon fodder, which is you're expendable. You're a pawn. That's just the way it goes. But people who go in make that decision. Fortunately, they probably make a decision on half-truths and lies in the military, right? Because they don't do the due diligence. And I think they make the decision to go in because they believe in our country. They believe in service. And they believe in honor. And they believe that they're going to get honor back. But unfortunately, you can't have a military based on honor. You can't have a military that's compassionate. You can't have military leaders who care. Their job is to fight wars and to use as many bodies as possible. And recruit as many because they're expendable. They're expendable. You think about that. You're in the military, you're expendable. You're nothing more than a number, nothing more than cannon fodder. You have no place. I'm sorry, I can say it because I was in, and that's the truth. So whether you're in, really, you got to figure out for yourself what you want to do. right? If you're not in and you're listening to this, you better take a good hard look at it, at what you're getting into, right? But one thing is for sure is that when you get in there and the shit hits the fan and you're involved in negative situations, remember this: you can only blame one person, and that's you, because you weren't forced into the military. You voluntarily signed into the military. Remember that. So whether or not the information they gave you was true, that's on you. That's what you have to decide. That's what you have to decide. But right now, there's enough evidence out there to give you a good picture. I've been there over 25 years of investigation, living it, being part of it. And I would say today that that was my main purpose. That was my main purpose for being in the military. It was something that had to, everything that had to happen. Do I like it? No. Do I want to change it? Yeah. I give my life for these folks for nothing. So anyways, the YouTubers, there's a lot of good dudes. Denys, DNY, just put in Ukraine YouTubers. There's another good one out there. He's an ex-military officer, which, okay, I'm going to read a link. And he's another good one out there. There are a lot of people reporting from inside Ukraine. It's just, it's the days. If you're still getting your information from the news networks, the newspapers, and the mainstreams, you got to wake up. You got to go offline. You got to go off the beaten path. And you got to just find people on YouTube that are talking about it. Check out the stations from outside the United States, like the telegraph station, right? Who's telling the truth, who's telling you what's happening. Today, I wouldn't have known what was happening on the USS Abraham Lincoln. I've heard about it, but I blew it up like most Americans. But to see Denny talk about it and share that, oh my goodness. And it's different. What I ask for you to do is just share this. If you're listening to this, whether or not you agree with me or not, share with somebody. Just share it. Talk with it. Just share it. Yeah, I don't know what yeah. That's kind of, I'm not going to do a whole lot of editing for this. I want this to get pushed out real soon. On my next YouTube, come back, check out all my other podcasts. I'm just an ordinary guy, grassroots, just speaking from the heart and from experience. A lot of stuff, I don't use a script. It's just in me. Eventually, I'll probably do videos. Eventually, I'll probably do podcasts where I'm talking to people. But right now, it's just me telling the truth, how it is, illuminating. There's .com. It's my website. I'm still working on it, but you can still get some information on that. My podcast. Listen, give me some feedback. Share with somebody. My next episode is going to be about, of course, it's going to be about officers behaving badly, how the office politics is different in the military, and how it impacts you outside after you get out. It's different. You need to know this. And if you're in, it's coming. You think you're going to retire? You've been a good stellar soldier? Remember now, that doesn't mean anything. The people, those officers that died in that Barry's fire, those officers who died in it because it was negligence of the United States Army, were decorated officers. They had survived wars, right? Well, and that's how our government showed their appreciation. I'm hearing a little bit about the first doctrine getting watered down. There's a lot of movement in there, but what happens is that only happens. It still has to go through the process, but first at the grassroots levels, nothing's going to change. It's going to be the same. It's half the time because the people who are victims don't have the resources to pursue it, or they don't have sophistication, or they're just destroyed by it. There's a lot of military people who just walk away with their head down, PTSD, suicidals, because they don't know anything else better. And that's sad. I ran out of coffee. Buy me another cup. Appreciate it. Gives me the energy to go. I'm doing fine. Thanks for listening. Thanks for letting me rant. I try to put one every week, Fridays. Today I'm a little late. Probably wasn't going to do it today until I found out about the Abraham Lincoln. Thank you. Always do your due diligence. Ask questions. Right? And don't take the ASVAB unless you're serious about it. Only take it after you graduate high school. Goodbye.